Well, hello everybody. Welcome to another I'm going to say riveting episode of Calling for the Wilderness. I'm going to name it and claim it.
Yeah.
Um,
You like
uh,
most people like they record the content of their podcast and then they record around it like an introduction and a
oh
conclusion
yeah.
so that it has Derek he calls it into existence in the moment and we just get on that train and try to make sure it doesn't crash.
I've been listening to a lot of Carmen lately to
Oh
annoy my
yes.
the worship director Naomi. She's been on the podcast before beside me. She actually remembers doing a skit to Carmen, um, not Bite the Dust, but the Lazarus one. Lazarus!
Ooh,
Lazarus!
yum
I was playing
boy.
that the other day and just cranked it during Lazarus.
Amazing.
I was here. Yeah,
Yeah.
so now I'm in the name it and claim it. We're going to do this. We're going to conquer the world. Jesus, Christus
Yeah.
Victor,
Yeah.
get me my sword. I'm going to
I
go.
my favorite one had to be I think it was the early days of Creflo Dollar, and and he was preaching the one time. He said, brothers and sisters, I was talking to somebody this week, and they said, Pastor, how can you sit in the back of a Rolls Royce Phantom 5 and praise the Lord when there's so much going on in the world? And he said, and I said to him, how can you not praise the Lord sitting in the back of a Rolls Royce Phantom 5? Come on in. And I was just like, I think we missed the point.
He gets it.
Yeah,
He gets it.
yeah,
He gets it.
yeah. I'm
He
like, yeah,
gets it.
praise God in the comfort. I got that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was one I was listening to years and years ago, but he was talking about, I think it might have been Clefro Dollar too, but how Jesus was a rich man, um,
Hmm.
because his linen, uh, they couldn't separate it because it didn't have seams. Like when the Romans were
Oh
casting
yeah,
lots or dice to see who gets it because they didn't
yeah.
want to wreck it. It was like, you don't do that over cheap clothes. He was a rich man. He had money, and he was. I was like, all right, gotcha. You get it.
Amazing,
You get it.
amazing. Yeah,
You
yeah,
get it.
yeah.
Yeah. So, name it
Oh
and
man,
claim it. It is happening.
name it and claim it. I'm pretty sure too that his garments were given to him by Pilate, weren't they? As like a mockery of him being the king of the Jews,
Let's
something like
not
that.
get into context
Sorry,
and
sorry, sorry. I
looking
apologize.
at
I'm
verses through the lens of other verses. Let's
I'm
just take
gonna
it.
There you go.
So
I forgot what we were doing. I missed the point. I just
yeah,
derailed us. Let's get back on board.
we'll get back on board. We're
Or
naming
like
it
you call,
a
yeah,
riveting
call
episode.
call the what's the other one? They call the devil's money into your account. I've tried that so many times, and I feel like I keep losing money every time I go back to my account. So I must not be doing it right.
I went to a. I was young. Like this is before Bible college. I
Hmm.
was a teen. I went to this conference in Thunder Bay where a guy was preaching, and I want to say it was something about communion. What was the title of it? And he had like
Hmm.
a course book, and he was teaching the course. And his thing was he was telling us that he's lost a lot of money in the stock market.
Hmm.
Um, but God has told him that he's going to make lots of money in the stock market. So he's learning his lesson right now on the faithfulness of God, and that it's going to happen. But you got
Nice.
to go through the trials and stuff
Yeah.
before you do it, before you make the lots. And I
Yeah.
was like,
It's like when yeah there's a story of the guy who he kept every day he would pray and pray to God that he would win the lottery, and week in and week out he'd pray to God he'd win the lottery, and wasn't winning the lottery, and finally God comes down and says, I'd give you a hand winning the lottery if you just buy a ticket.
yeah,
And obviously the guy you're talking about, he understood. You buy the ticket, you
yeah,
commit to the process, and you watch for the
yeah,
faithfulness of God. So
yeah. You better hear God clearly. It's like my kids' college fund, my house, my mortgage, my car. I lost it all. I feel a lot like
and this and these are the kind of conversations, and this is the depth of theology that we really came into when we were in Eston College
yeah.
all those years
There's
ago,
a
right?
segue. Eh? We're gonna tie it back into Eston College. Welcome to part two
Oh
on
man.
Eston College. Um, we we
Yeah.
talked the first week about the move to they're going to move to Regina, um, and I believe I don't think I'm misquoting here. Be more of a mentor and community minded institution. No,
Mm.
what's the word I'm looking for? It's
Well, they talk about being, where was it here?
it's
I think they talk
a
about being,
disciple, not discipleship,
yeah, spirit filled, Jesus centered, mission oriented, and
mission
Bible
oriented.
based.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they're
So,
gonna.
yeah, and as you say, I think the main thing is like, at least from their president Sean, one of the things that they're really trying to address is like the practical needs of ministry and needs of ministers for the churches, and recognizing that actually, there's a key part about like where the training is actually vocational
Mhm,
for the ongoing life and work of the church in both professional and lay capacities.
mhm,
And I think that seems to be, as you say, like that kind of shift, and trying to they're trying to seems to be trying to put themselves in a place where they're in a way becoming kind of more accessible, and be able to offer more kind of practical support to that wider network of actual churches where they feel that there might be a disconnect from where they are in Eston right now. So
yeah, yeah. So 2 weeks ago, last week we did one episode on Remembrance Day. So
yeah.
2 episodes ago we talked about kind of um, Eston College and what happened, but we ran out of time because it was getting long. Because two old alumni get together and start sharing stories, and all of a sudden time flies.
There you
So this
go.
week I believe we were going to talk about more specifics on what we learned. Was that the route we were going
Yeah.
to go? Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. Definitely do that.
Which I was thinking about, like there's certain times where I'll be talking to someone and I will bring up um, something that I learned in Bible school, but
Mm.
mostly like I learned it wasn't a no, was it a Bible school? I learned scubala, which Paul uses, which means
Yeah.
shit, um, explicit language. Um, and so our new pastor Daniel,
Mm.
he's got
And I think you were sharing that one, yeah, where he's got his little rocks or something like
yeah, yeah,
that.
and I wrote scuba on a rock, and I'm like, I cannot wait till someone asks you what scuba is, because he got like Hope Joy Piece, and I wrote
Yeah.
scuba on one. I'm jiffy. So I learned that, but I think like there's certain things that'll pop up that'll be like, oh yeah, I learned that at Bible school, or I learned that, but I think for me, Bible school really taught me how to learn, and so the
Mm.
knowledge I've gained after
Mm.
through discussions with the people or reading or looking critically at things. Um,
Mm.
but that gave me the framework to do it. I'm
Mm.
doing a book study with some guys in the church, and we just finished a book. We're talking about all the. they love the book, and I like it. It's a good book called
Mm.
"Countering the Gospel." But
Okay.
I'm the one constantly going, yeah, but like this is a very utopian way to look at the church. Like if everything goes
Mm.
well, this is it. But
Mm.
reality is it doesn't do
Mm.
that. Like submitting to
Mm.
leadership and trying to change things from within. I'm like, yeah, but if the leadership is garbage and
Mm.
unforgiving and unrepentant and will not
Mm.
change, then what do? You're just stuck and accomplice
Yeah.
to their acts.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
so things like that, or
Mm.
although I did preach a while ago when I was preaching on the first seven, the churches in Revelation, seven
Oh yes.
churches,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and that was from a Dean Pinter class. I didn't
Yeah.
remember everything that happened in seven churches. I had to go back and study and learn them. And I reached out to Dean about some things. But that whole
Did he
idea
help?
that
Did he
that's
help you, or did he ignore you?
no, he did. I asked him for some books, and he gave me some recommendations, and I think I was able to
Okay.
find one of them online, and or two of them. I was able to
Mm.
go use those that go. And it was just a really good refresher. But that whole
Yeah.
idea of the seven
Yeah.
churches, um, the things written to them are very specific to that region. Like
Mm.
lukewarm water is actually because they had lukewarm water from two different
Yeah.
springs,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the jewels and the stay awake because they were attacked twice because they would fall asleep because they're um, sleepy because they're on a hill, and so
Yeah.
they don't think they'll ever be attacked. And sure enough, they are.
Mm.
So be vigilant and watchful. There's all this history to these
Yeah.
different seven churches, and I don't
Mm.
think I ever would have been pointed in that direction without something like the Bible school, because I never
Mm.
heard like no one ever preaches on
Mm.
the seven chapters unless they
Mm.
pick like one of the things like God is
Yeah.
first, his first love, and you're like, okay,
Mm.
I get it,
Yeah.
but there's layers,
Mm.
and I think
Yeah. Yeah.
the the idea or the knowledge that there is layers in it, and that is
Mm.
deeper than I'm just going to open up my prayer journal or I've got a little book on one of the things and I'm learning things, which is good.
Mm.
It's fine, but there's definitely when you get into languages and
Mm.
context and that, it's a lot richer and fuller. Um,
Mm.
and I don't think I would have had the idea or the direction to pursue that without
Yeah.
the Bible school and
Yeah.
conversations outside of it.
Yeah. 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 No, I think that's really good. That's really good. I think it reminds me too about how like there's the important things about like the context of the story, and as you say, like being reminded actually that like there's some really wise things that get said in the Bible, like that whole idea about like not being a lukewarm Christian.
Yeah,
Obviously comes, it's easy to say that's a biblical, a biblical imperative, or a biblical construct for us to
yeah,
understand kind of where are we in our spirituality. Are we kind of wishy-washy? Have we committed? Are we sitting on the fence? Like there's all the different ways we interpreted it. But actually, as you say, that the what underpins that though, and being reminded that there's often like something really specific about the actual embodied lives that the people are living,
yeah,
that the spiritual truth comes into, and it's a deeper way of making those conversations and making those interactions and those teaching points even more profound,
mm,
because they're about the depth of the person's being, not just their spirit. And it's about the depth of God's commitment and God's love to the whole of creation, not just this kind of spiritual ethereal plane that we hope to, as you say, that utopian dream that we hope to one day get to.
yeah,
And I think, like for me, that was something I really struggled with, and continue in some ways to struggle with in my life, is that kind of believing that me as a human being in my body actually matter, and that the experiences that I have matter. And I think it was always really easy, particularly before Bible college, to feel a discomfort with some of the stuff that was going on in churches, because it felt disconnected from the life I was living. And I kept being told like I had to figure out a way to basically take my lived experiences and fit them into this worldview, or this narrative, or this interpretation, so that I could get to truth. And what I didn't realize is actually, as you say, like what God was doing was God was trying to speak into the things that were going on in my life in a way that actually gave me new language and new understanding for how God was present, redeeming, and loving me and the world around me in exactly where we were. And
mm,
actually that kind of contextualization and the incarnation, like two things that are central to us in our faith. We're coming up towards Advent and then Christmas again, where like the central theme is the incarnation of God.
mm,
And yet, when we start to talk about being image bearers of God or following in the way of Jesus, we think that our incarnation doesn't matter.
yeah,
And trying to actually say that actually, no, it does matter. Like the incarnation, what the transformation in life that happens in us through our time with God, through our discipleship, through our devotion, through our fellowship with each other, through prayer, through worship, through silence, whatever it might, through Carmen,
Yeah.
challenging us in the ways to live those righteous invasions of truth. All of the all
We're
of
on
those
a
things,
riot.
yeah, but it's like all of those things actually do matter. Um,
Yeah.
as we think about being incarnate people who incarnate the word made flesh, and God's word continues to be made flesh in us if we actually follow it. And as you say, like if you're not mindful of the fact that like the story of Christianity is bigger than your church, it's bigger than your denomination, it's bigger than the interpretations of people which might be, well educated, wise, very experienced, but that will come through their life. And it's not the be all and end all, because God is not contained in those singular things, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And while you're talking, I'm thinking of that integrative seminar with the
Mm.
meals, right?
Yeah.
And your dad was famous for this, and they were always unreal. But the worship and uh, the sacredness of
Mm.
preparing
Mm.
a meal, and the even the co-creating aspect of it, right? The
Yeah.
God has given God has called us to be co-creators, and in this tiny way, we can be co-creators in a way
Mm.
that sustains us.
Yeah.
And as we eat, we are feeding ourselves, but realizing that not only the food, but also God sustains us and feeds us and keeps us going, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, I've got the Life of the World by Alexander Schmemann over there, where he talks about, man is what he eats.
Yeah. Yeah.
Claiming
Yeah.
that one is like, this is a very spiritual theological question that
Mm.
we are, um, and
Yeah.
so yeah, just different ways like that. Like it really opened my eyes to an integrative life. Like it was hit over the head, like Brian Tisdale and them, the holistic approach to living, right? That
Mm.
your whole life is one, and
Mm.
this idea of this dichotomy between spiritual and physical, or even like I see it now in the political realm a lot. Like, yeah, I'm a
Mm.
Christian, but it doesn't affect my
Mm.
decision making, or I'm this, but it doesn't affect this. And you're like, well, no, it's all one. You're one person.
Mm.
You're one image bearer. Um,
Mm.
so everything you do should be in line with that.
Yeah.
And it's okay if
Yeah.
your theology doesn't line up with mine, or we have different ideas and stuff. But to be a person of integrity
Mm.
in those decisions, and
Yeah.
now in the way that we live. Um,
Mm.
Especially
Yeah.
now we're going to go down another road, but especially in church, I find you have to be a certain type of person. Like you can't
Mm.
really be yourself. Um,
Mm.
you almost have to be and I'm going to use quotes, better version, or a more
Yeah.
holistic
Oh,
version of
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Mm.
and yet the church is the one place where you should be yourself, right? That you are,
Mm.
if you're going to come in and live life well with other people. And that's what I liked about living at Eston,
Mm.
was it wasn't just classes, and it wasn't just, you know, services and stuff. We were living together. So you saw the best and
Mm.
worst in people, and you still accepted them. You
Mm.
still, you learned that you could be free. And in that sense, it was deep worship together,
Mm.
and that we were able
Mm.
to live authentic lives, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
24/7, and still
Mm.
be accepted, and not viewed differently, but
Mm.
more open to asking for help or helping others, because you yourself knew that you were going to need help,
Yeah.
or you had received help.
Yeah. 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 And I think what, as you say too, like that living together and that intentional community also then helped you to realize like that you need both like the busyness and the stillness for things to
Mm.
to be learned and for things to become a part of who you are, right? Like in
Yeah.
and like you can spend a lot of time in class, but then you'd have conversations with people like that over a meal, or like you'd be playing sports later on and then be talking to people. Like it's just the that kind of intention, and as you say, like that lack of separation between being able to say this is who I am and this is what I'm learning and this is my life, and having all of those three things actually together was a really beautiful opportunity. Because
Mhm.
as you say, like even if you are working in the church, it's hard sometimes to feel like it's okay to be yourself in that. Like you feel
Yeah.
like you need to live this public persona, um, because you don't want to let the team down, or you don't want to give people the wrong impression, or and yet there's something about then you can spend a lot of time like just feeling really disconnected from yourself, and not
Yeah.
feeling like it's okay to be you. And actually that space that we had together was, and what that kind of what I miss most about kind of intentional living with other people is that ability just to have a bunch of people that it's just okay to be yourself, like,
Yeah.
and to kind of feel the way you do. And I think I had some I had some very kind of personally painful times in Eston during college, and I just remember having a few people that like I could be and feel what I was, be who I
Yeah.
was and feel what I was feeling openly with people while sharing life together was absolutely crucial for
Mhm.
me to have been able to kind of heal and grow and move on. And
I had
um
some personal times in Aston too, if you remember
yeah,
correctly.
yeah,
Some hard times that I've gone out
yeah.
of somewhat. Um, yeah. No, it was you really felt the spectrum of life, right? Like
Mm,
aside from being in a job and having that, or family,
mm,
or there's that part, but
mm,
for what you're able to do, you felt
mm.
the wide spectrum.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, it was crazy.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it
And I think
was
too,
really
like
good times.
one of the things that made it work in a way that makes me nervous, I guess, too, is, I mean, we talked about the first one, is like just not knowing and being so disconnected from what it is now. But I'm like, having the college in a town where there was literally nothing going on
Mhm.
meant that those kind of contact points of intentional community were really easy to create, and were things that
Yeah.
people, it wasn't like, oh, if you're not busy on Wednesday nights, let's get together. It was like Wednesday nights the floors got together, and that was,
Yeah.
and that was just, that was part of how we shared life together. And and sometimes we do ridiculous things, and sometimes you have like really kind of profound, like very vulnerable moments. And
Yeah.
and it
Well,
was and
yeah.
it was nice because it didn't feel like you were kind of competing with this other, like, oh, here's all the other things that could be going on in your life right now if you weren't here in this room with these 10 other people. And
Yeah.
again, I recognize that for some people that was a painful time,
Mm.
and it wasn't just like rose tinted glasses and remembering how good my times were. And
Yeah.
but I think there's something about, those
Oh
things
yeah, no, there
together.
was definitely some hard times, and even fighting against some of that community, like
Mm,
curfews and stuff. And you're like, what is curfew and why is floor meetings mandatory and this
yeah,
time, and like I could be doing other stuff and that, and
mm,
it's supposed to produce a culture of community and that kind of stuff. And you're like,
mm,
this is dumb. I don't want to do this. I see these people all the time, and yeah.
mm, yeah,
But looking back, I see it. But in the moment, you're like, this is there's a
yeah,
lot of rules here. There's a lot of, and I didn't agree with all the rules, and I still don't agree with all the rules.
yeah,
But it was part of the
yeah,
price, right?
yeah, 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 yeah. And you realize too, like what I think, as you say, is like the things that you look back at with fondness were things often that were experienced within the construct of those rules. So,
Yeah,
that framework that the college as leadership were looking to how they could create and foster something,
yeah,
whether we would understand it or not, or whether we would think it was great or not. And yet you look back at it, you're like, oh gosh, I see what that structure and what that what that those confinements and things like that actually
Yeah.
did for me in a good
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
you know
Yeah. I wish I could
mm.
sleep like I did in college. That'd be unreal.
Oh,
Um,
you were great there, weren't you?
yeah. But I remember one of my favorite memories is we were we were roommates,
Yeah.
and your family had got an espresso machine, and so you invited me over for an espresso, and it was like
Yeah.
9 o'clock, or it was just before curfew, and so you had made one that had like quadruple shot espresso in the
Yeah.
coffee, and you put it in one of those measuring cups. It was
Yeah.
like a liter of coffee,
Yeah.
and because we had to go right away, I pounded it. And I was still kind of tired and stuff, so I went to
Yeah.
bed and I laid in bed and I stayed awake for 6 hours, just staring at the top of my bunk. And someone had carved like, "I'm, I'll kill you" or something on the bunk that I'd never seen before, and I just stared at that. So I spent 6 hours like figuring like, well, how would they do that? Would they come in this door? Would they go this way?
Yeah.
If they made enough noise, would Tim wake up? What would happen? Like,
No. Yeah, the
yeah.
the answer to anyone who was my roommate in college was no. Tim would not wake up.
No, he would not. It was amazing. I loved it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
it was a good memory.
Mm,
But yeah, like we
yeah.
had the chili cook-offs and stuff. I brought that
Mm,
here. We did a chili cook-off
nice. Yeah.
for our fall fair. And yeah, it
Mm,
was looking back, and I don't know. Like, I can't say what it'll look like in Regina. I don't know how they're gonna set it
mm,
up. I don't know. Like, I don't even know
mm.
dorms or if they're just gonna get apartments or it's gonna be kind of
Yeah,
a
yeah,
other
yeah,
one. I don't know
yeah,
how it's gonna look up. And I
yeah.
hope, like I really hope that they can. I hope and pray that they can recreate that sense of
Mm,
community and almost isolation, like sense of isolation, but in a good
mm,
way, right?
yeah.
Um, or some ways in a good way.
Mm,
So I hope they can recreate it. I hope they
mm,
all their goals that they're striving for, that they
mm,
reach,
mm,
both
yeah.
financially and
Mm,
spiritually, or
mm,
whatever their
mm,
goals and their values, mission.
mm, yeah,
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 it'll
yeah.
be interesting to see.
Mm,
I'm very
yeah, yeah.
interested to see how it turns out. But it's
Mm.
sad that that's the chapter in Eston. Like, when did the Bible school get built? Because while we were there, they had like their 44-year anniversary or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because he's in it. I'm trying to remember Sean in his
Like, I remember 60 years was a big thing.
yeah, yeah. Because I remember Sean saying that one of his messages was about when it was built. Let me see if I can find it here.
Because I remember people being like, I've been there. Like, Bob Stone went in like, what, the 60s or something, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so 1944
Okay. Oh,
to
maybe that's
two.
the
So
first
it was
posting.
yeah. So it was yeah
60 and oh 4, which
1944.
makes sense.
Yeah,
That's when we
and
were there.
then yeah, and then it became the Full Gospel Bible College in 2005,
Yeah.
and then in 2007 became Eston College.
Yeah. Um,
Mm,
so 44, 6, so 60, 70 is 14, 80 would be 2024. So 78 years.
mm,
It's that's a history. But things change, right? Like, it's not
yeah,
culture changes, things change. I mean, to
yeah,
hold on to something just for the sake of tradition and the way it
mm,
is quite um, not the right approach. Like, I just had a conversation. Well, not just. I had a conversation a while ago with the lady in
mm,
church because I was talking about, we got pews. It'd be nice to do like chairs or something in there so we can rearrange the sanctuary. And she was saying that of all the prayer times and all these great memories she has with the pews and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm glad you had those memories. It's great that they were there, but
mm,
they're they're just a physical thing. Like just because you have memories attached to it doesn't mean that those memories have to leave when the pews do. And maybe putting in chairs will allow new people to have similar experiences that you have that wouldn't happen with pews. And pews or whatever, right? And maybe this moving to Regina is going to allow people to have similar experiences like we had that wouldn't have happened in Eston, but are now going to happen in Regina.
Yeah.
And maybe they're the things that are changing, not just location, but with whatever they want to do with their mission or that. Once again, I'm not privy to the specifics, but maybe, and I pray, and I hope that allows others to have even better experiences than we had um, in a different way, that it impacts and touches people's lives that would not have been impacted the way they did while they were in Eston, or if they were in Eston. So just because things change doesn't mean that it gets worse. And just because things change doesn't negate the history that happened behind it, but the realization that while looking back, we're still trying to do things for the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
that's the one. Derek Wilson wrapping this one up.
Wrap it up. If I remember correctly from plumbing school, this is crane up, this is crane down. Like when you got lowering crane things.
Amazing.
Head up.
Take it away. Take it away.
All right. Yeah, take it away. This episode, it's going up. Top of the charts.
Named, claimed, and riveting as ever.
Done. Would you expect anything less from this podcast? I don't.
And sometime this is just to entice anyone who's listening to come back. Sometime in the next couple of weeks, Derek Wilson has got an announcement to make, and you do not want to miss it. It's going to go live here to the rest of the world.
Yeah, let's say that for next week.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. This is the teaser. This is the teaser. This is to get people back. If you want to know what the big news is, you've got to come back to hear it.
Yeah, that's next week, I'll be able to say
Boom.
It. Okay. All right.
Excellent.
Although I think the people that listen already know the announcement. My mom and Nana, but
whoa. There you go. So yeah, the spoiler alert that might have brought people back. Now Derek has just shot it in the foot.
Yeah.
This is.
Although I will say the week after we probably won't do anything because my sister's having a baby on this. On December 1st, so I'm gonna head over to the mainland and then bring my mom back on the island. So
we should get her on the recording. We should record with Mama Wilson.
I'll see. She might do it, she might not. But anyway, through this holiday season, I'm not sure the regularity of our
we're going to be like this. Yeah. We're going to be that crane going up and that crane going down.
Yeah.
All right. Peace out, all.
Bye. All right.